Good morning. This is Mrs. Scholig, and this is lesson 1.2, overtime pay in our Money Matters class. This is chapter 1, which deals with gross income. So if you recall, last class we talked about straight time pay. And straight time pay was really, we used the example of McDonald's, right? So if you worked at McDonald's and you made $15 an hour, and you worked for 2 hours, you would earn $30, right? So let's say you worked 40 hours for the week. Now normally a normal pay week for employees is 40 hours, right? 8 hours in a day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 40 hours. And that's where the number 40 generally came from. So, but if you worked anything greater than 40, you would earn overtime pay. And overtime pay is generally calculated at 1.5 times your regular salary. So if you made $15 an hour, you would have to take $15 times 1.5, and that would give you $22.50. So if you have a calculator in front of you, check it out. 15 times 1.5 is $22.50. So any hour you worked over 40 hours, you would make $22.50. That's quite a difference, right? But you're working a lot of hours, right? And you want to get paid for it. That's the thought process. So let's just go through how to calculate your overtime pay. So here we are on page 100 in the textbook if you're in the classroom. If you're not, I'm showing you the page right here. And it says, the first thing it says is, why do employers get paid a higher rate for overtime work? And it gives a short story. It says, Jake Norris works at the local library. He works a regular 40-hour work week shelving books at the library. His salary is $10 per hour, and he makes $15 an hour when he works on Saturdays. Sometimes he would rather be out with his friends on Saturday, but he likes the extra pay, right? So he's given up going out with his friends so that he'll earn a little bit more money. So maybe it's worth it to him to earn a little bit more money versus going out with his friends, okay? Overtime pay. So when you work more than the regular number of hours, you may earn overtime pay. The overtime rate, called time and a half, is usually 1.5 times your hourly rate. You may receive an overtime pay rate of double time or twice your regular hourly rate. Employees often pay double time for Sundays and holidays. Okay, so it's either time and a half or double time. And time and a half is usually over 40 hours, and double time is generally used if you work Sundays. Not so much Sundays anymore, but Sundays or holidays. Holidays are the big one, right? If you have to work on Thanksgiving, you're going to give up having dinner with your family. So you're going to want to get paid for that, right? So maybe if you're making, I don't know, if you're working at McDonald's, you make $15, but if you have to work Thanksgiving, you're going to make $30 or earn $30 an hour. So maybe you'd be willing to give up, dinner with mom and dad in order to earn $30 an hour. I'm not sure. You'd have to decide that, right? So here's the formula. Your overtime pay is equal to the overtime rate times the overtime hours worked. So we know how to calculate the regular pay, so you have to do that first, and then you calculate your overtime pay, right? And then add them both together. So let's go through example 1. That spells it out pretty nicely, I think. Alan Moore is paid $8.20 an hour for a regular 40-hour week as a restaurant host. His overtime rate is 1.5 times his regular hourly rate. This week he worked his regular 40 hours plus 10 hours of overtime. What is his total pay? So this book generally breaks it down very nicely into steps, very easy steps. So the first step is you're going to find the straight time pay. We know how to do that, right? That's just the hourly rate times the regular hours worked. So in this case, it was $8.20 times the 40 hours. So his regular pay that we learned in 1.1 was $328. Then we have to figure out his overtime pay. So he worked 10 hours of overtime, and he's going to make a larger wage, right? So the overtime rate is 1.5 times $8.20. Now you can use this 1.5, or you can use 1.5, right? Because a half equates to a decimal form of 0.5. So 1.5 times $8.20 times 10 hours. You can go off and figure out the overtime rate on your own and then plug it in. So you could do the 1.5 times 820, and you would come up with some number and just take that number and multiply it by 10 to get $123 in overtime pay. So if he made $328 for his first 40 hours and then $123 for the additional 10 hours, you'd have to add them together in order to get your total pay. So step 3 does just that. You find the total pay by adding the straight time pay of $328 to the overtime rate pay of $123, and you get $451 in total pay. Okay? All right, so I'm going to do 2 questions with you. Concept check number 1. Find the total pay, check your answers in the back of the book. So if you're in the classroom and you want to check your answers in the back of the book, you'll be able to do that. Okay, number 1. Josie Perez makes $9 an hour, and she worked 40-hour regular hours and 6 hours at time and a half. So she makes $9 an hour, she works 40 regular hours and 6 hours at time and a half. Okay, so I'm going to come over here. I've already done all of the work for you, so let's follow along. Okay, so step 1 is to find the straight time pay. And we know how to do that, right? You take the salary, the number of or the hourly rate. The hourly rate times the hours worked. So for Josie, she made $9 an hour. She worked 40 hours a week. She earned $360 in straight time pay, right? Remember, that's the straight time pay. Now we have to figure out what's the overtime pay. Okay, so the second step is to find the overtime pay. And in order to do that, we take the overtime rate and we multiply it times the overtime hours worked. And that will give you the overtime pay. So for Josie's example, you would take 1.5, that's what she said she earned, right? It wasn't double, it was just time and a half. So 1.5 times $9 an hour times 6 hours. Now, you could go off to the side here. Sometimes the way I like to do these is I say, okay, 1.5, so she makes time and a half. She earns $9, so time and a half would be 9 plus 4.5, so that would be $13.50, right? That's how much she makes when she works overtime. So really, I just have to take the $13.50, multiply it by the 6 hours she worked, and she made $81 in overtime. But that's not her total pay, right? That's just the overtime. So you have to add that back to the straight time pay. So that's step 3, find the total pay. So it's the straight time pay plus the overtime pay gives you the total pay. So in this problem, problem number 1 in the concept check, it's the straight time pay of $360 plus $81 in overtime gives you $441 in total pay. Okay? Great. Let's go on. Let's go on to the next one. Problem 2. I'm going back to the textbook. Ed Lang makes $11.50 an hour. This week he worked 36 regular hours and 7 hours at time and a half. Now, I don't know why they're paying him overtime at 36 hours versus the 40, but I guess every company is different of what they consider is overtime, or how many hours they have to work in order, at their regular hours before they make overtime. So be sure to read the problem. It's not always going to be 40 hours, okay? So he makes $11.50 an hour for the first 36 hours, and any overtime pay is over that 36 hours. And he worked 7 hours at time and a half. Okay, so here's problem 2. Step 1, find the straight time pay. So for Ed, it's the hourly rate times the hours worked. So he makes $11.50 an hour, the problem said. He worked 36 hours, so he made $414 in his straight time pay. Okay? That's step 1. Step 2 is we're going to find the overtime pay. So the overtime pay is the overtime rate. The overtime rate times the overtime hours worked. I'm just going to put my calculator there so that doesn't blow away. Okay, so if he makes $11.50, so let's see, that would be $17.25, I think, right? If I do that, can you do that for me on your calculator? When you actually do the math, 1150 times 1.5, so yep, 1725. So that's, or you can just put in your calculator like this, 11.5 times 1.5 times 7. There's no need to even go off to the side and do this like I do it. Just go straight across, right? It's multiplication, it's commutative. Just go straight across, you don't even need the parentheses. So 1150 times 1.5 times 7 equals $120.75. So that's pretty nice, right? For 7 hours of overtime. So now he made his straight time pay of $414. He made his overtime salary of $120. And when you come down to step 3 to find the total pay, you're just adding those two together, right? So it's the straight time pay of $414 plus the overtime pay of $120.75 gives you the total pay of $534.75. Okay, once again, if you have any questions, be sure to find me or email me. This is a long video. I do apologize for that. You'll be responsible for completing, going to Files and Teams, finding the file for 1.2, and completing the 5 questions in section 4 where it says elaborate. So you'll complete those 5, and then you'll, when you see me, you'll be bringing your worksheet 1.2, and you'll do that together, right? And you'll get a quiz grade for that. All right, have a great day, and we'll see you next time.